Welcome everybody to another BIM broadcast. Today is February the 23rd of 2018. We're going to be joined today by Ryan Cameron of DLR Group and talking some data and talking how you can extract data from a design file and analyze some of that. That's going to be some of the fun that we're going to go through today. I'm Sean Zerbis, technical evangelist here at CTC, center myself up in the frame here. And probably should take a look at my show notes real quick here. We're going to be showing off a number of things. And one of the first things I wanted to do is I want to talk a little bit about the technology. You know, Ryan and I were talking before the show, and I always like to share something new and interesting with you guys. And today Ryan's going to be talking about a few things. And I wanted to share a little bit about some of the tech that we kind of pre-discussed. So you kind of have an idea of that and some links you can go to. So I'm going to show my desktop here. Hey, there's Ryan. Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
So over here, take a look. We've got Echo and specifically the Alexa tool set from Amazon. And there's some really cool things you can use this for in the world of architecture. It's actually quite interesting. I've seen some things Ryan has done. I'll share his channel in a moment here, and you can actually go take a look at some of the interesting things Ryan has done with Alexa. Of course, a lot of this data grab that we have, you know, CTC, the company that I primarily work for, has a couple of tools that are pretty powerful in data grabbing, but also Dynamo, of course. And so if you want to know more about that, dynamobim.org is a fantastic tool set to take a look at to kind of start acquiring and manipulating, transferring some of this data in sort of the little to medium data range. And then we've got here Power BI. And Power BI is a fantastic tool set. There's a number of different data analytics, business information type toolkits out there. Microsoft's Power BI is just one of them. But we're going to use this one because the learning curve is low. It's not non-existent, of course. Every tool has a learning curve, but it's very low with Power BI. And so we're going to be kind of talking a bit about what some of the powers are there and how we've leveraged some of these tools to do some cool data analytics. We'll get to that in a moment here. So with that, I got to get my cursor back on my screen here. Let's actually talk to Ryan about who he is and what he does, so you guys have an idea of our guest today, who, you know, what his background is a bit, and then we're going to start talking about some of this data and analytics and data in AEC. So, Ryan, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking your time.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I think you've got a great program here, and love your past guests. I'm really looking forward to future guests you're going to have. So Perfect. Thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Yeah, a little bit of background about me. I guess, let's see, I took a drafting class like a lot of people did in high school, and learned some AutoCAD, and that set me on my path.
AutoCAD is a lot of our beginning tools, at least in our current age. I think in the future we'll see a lot of people whose first tool is not AutoCAD. It'll be tools like SketchUp and Revit as their first tools. But yeah, you and I are of the generation where AutoCAD was the tool in our schools. So we did all take drafting class. It was great. So
yeah. Went and got an engineering degree at Southeast Community College in Nebraska. So met a couple interesting people there and encouraged me to continue my education at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I'm glad I did. Met some familiar names. Went to college with Nate Miller, Proving Ground.
Oh, yeah.
With Dave Patera of D-Rofus. So we all graduated right around the same time. Really learned a lot of interesting things. And that's where I learned about Revit, because in college that's the time to test all that stuff out, right?
Oh yeah, find all the cool tools, the Revits, the Dynamos, the Rhinomos, the Rhino itself, Grasshopper, all those fun tools. SketchUp.
Yeah, so we were messing around with all that stuff, back in the day, 10 years ago, maybe even longer. But I don't want to date myself too much. But jumped on that. Went to a startup firm called Visions and Architecture, and they based their practice around building information modeling. And the recession hit, and some things went sideways for them. And it's okay. I came out of it. Everybody came out of the recession okay. And but really picked up a lot of things, again, working with Dave Patera. I went to college with him and worked with him at Visions. So we learned a lot together on Revit. And really, quite honestly, he was the first person that I ever heard say, Revit is just a giant database. Why don't we use it like that?
Yeah.
And, it got everyone was thinking about that. They're thinking about it now, but, back in the day, not everybody was thinking about it that way. So there's all this data behind what we're doing. Um, we need to collect it and distribute better so we can analyze our designs. Otherwise, we're just pushing out designs left and right that, maybe we have the answer, maybe we don't. I think it's time to take a hard look
Yeah,
and reanalyze everything.
absolutely. So you also talk a lot about buildings as data. And I want you to, I mean, we kind of alluded to a little bit here with, Revit specifically being a database, but tell me more about this buildings as data because it goes well beyond just Revit as a database.
Absolutely. So there's all the design aspects of it too, and we talk a lot about BIM, but BIM is really the backbone of how we do what we do, but it's not what we do as an architect, right? I have to put all these different pieces together, all these different schedules of elements, and we also have to know about how the people are going to use that design, right? So there's that whole aspect of it that I'm trying to build in as a dashboard,
Right.
from programmatic levels, from being able to flip really fast through different design iterations and saying, from a developer's pro forma saying, oh, what if we made it, 15 stories instead of 14? Well, in SketchUp and even in Revit to some degree, that's a hard change. But in a visual programming tool like Grasshopper or Dynamo,
Right.
it's just a toggle switch, and then boom, all the data changes.
Right.
The height, the total area of the building, all these things get affected, and it's not really a BIM thing,
Right.
right? It's a design thing. So we're trying to front load design. So we end up with a lot faster, more accurate tools that we can build ourselves.
So now
that's what I've just been finding fascinating.
So we're gonna coin a new acronym here today: Design Information Modeling, or DIM.
Oh, if we're doing that, I got a whole nother one.
Oh, I believe you.
Yeah. Why is it called building information modeling? We shouldn't be modeling, and it should be intelligent.
Right.
So why isn't it building intelligence modeling? I guess we could use modeling, but
yeah, right. I don't know. Exactly. So all this data, I mean, early in design, and that's kind of primarily, I think, where you're doing most of your work, right? Is early design?
Yep.
Or are you doing it also during so construction documents as well?
Oh yeah. It's everything. I mean, it's the full gamut. Even on the MEP side, I've built a couple dashboards for that
yep.
Kind of track the air changes, temperatures, and things like that as it's essentially a live feed from the Rev model. The problem that you run into is a pain point there, which is it has to be modeled accurately enough to garbage in, garbage out. So as long as it's modeled accurately, you're going to get accurate data out. That's just how it works.
Right. Exactly. So we hear a couple of terms in our industry that kind of get thrown around a little bit. One in particular, we hear big data. And big data is not really something that we necessarily tied originally to architecture, though we're hearing it more now. But there's a lot of different scales of data. There's big data, which is data from all different data sources coming together. You have, in some cases, the design criteria as part of that data set maybe coming out of Excel. You may have data coming out of Revit. You may have some spec data from other sources coming in, and it becomes big data. And when you're talking about a single project, it's not really big data, in my opinion. That's more medium kind of data, right? But when you're talking campuses, when you're talking cities, as you and I were talking pre-show, that's where you start getting big data, where you start, even as a corporation, if you took all of your projects over the last 3 years and you were able to capture that data, or this point moving forward for the next 3 years, and you start capturing some of that data, that becomes big data. What we're going to talk about primarily today, though, is sort of a smaller version of that, which I think you coined little data, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I think I wrote in my show notes small data, but yeah, little data. So tell me, we talked about what is buildings as data, but now what is specifically little data, and how are you leveraging that to some small degree?
Right. So the building process is really littered with tiny bits of data, metadata, attributes, and all these little things that they make up the big data, but there's a bunch of little things, essentially like just a small thing like area on the second floor, right? Or how many chairs are in this work group, or how much square footage does that desk take up? So it's a lot of little things. Not everybody's going to pay attention to it, and all those little things end up making up the big data. So it's not. And another thing I want to clear out is it's not necessarily the size file size, 2 terabytes of data. Well, that could be 6 models, could be 2 terabytes.
Yeah, it's a lot of data, but it's not necessarily big data.
Exactly. So I think that term gets overused quite a bit.
Right.
So, but it's really about those little moments that happen in the design process too. When you shift a building out and cantilever it, all those little factors start to play in. Like, okay, now I've increased structural, and all of a sudden I've got more roof area, drives up the cost. All these little tiny changes eventually add up to something big. So that's what we're trying to capture.
Right.
Is all the little moves.
Nice, nice. So, at CTC, again, the company that I primarily work for, we have a tool set that's called the BIM Data Suite, targeting the capture of data, both what I would call little data and what turns into, as you mentioned, little bits of information turn into big data, what turns into big data over time. But it's sort of a different scope than what you guys are going after. I think what our tool set at CTC does is it captures things like open and save times and basic stats about a model, and then it can also deep dive into the model and get all of the information at some interval that you can set. But it's not that large capture of the entire model isn't necessarily the fastest data grab, right? So when you're doing something like what Ryan is going to talk about in a moment here, some of the stuff that they do over there at DLR Group, some really cool methods by which you can analyze your design, rapidly iterate through designs, capture a little bit of information about a model. I was watching one of your videos that you had up on your YouTube channel. So Ryan also has a fantastic YouTube channel. Promote you a little bit there.
Awesome.
And I was watching this one that you were showing. I think it was basically a recap. It was season 2, episode 5 of Dynamo Nest. It's that thing that you host internally there at DLR and share on the web, where you were talking about glazing and the amount of glazing on different faces of the building, which I think, again, was a bit of a data day recap from Built's Data Day in Toronto last year. That was very interesting. And being able to go in there and capture that data, I think, is meaningful. So what are some of the other, ways in which you guys are leveraging some of this beyond those couple that you shared in that little meeting?
Sure. So let's see, that might have been the San Francisco repeat session of my Toronto. So let me think if I can recap. Programming data. So that's where I started all this off, is essentially finding a faster, more accurate. It doesn't have to do with even anything to do with speed. It's all about the accuracy. So let's say we get a programmatic table of areas and departments and rooms from a client, and we're building that into, let's say, the Revit platform, and so we're modeling all that stuff in. We need to always have a side-by-side comparison of, okay, are we hitting our marks? Are we within 10%? Are we even close on this?
Right.
And so as we flip between these, we want it to pop up and say fail or pass, plus or minus 10%. Well, that can lead to some other things, right? So that can lead to missing components of program too.
Right.
It's like, basically, we need to be able to display that. That's something Revit maybe can't do now, but using a tool like Dynamo, it's pretty much an automatable process. You click a button and it shoots out all those values, hit refresh in Power BI and says, oh, hey, we just started failing in these 3 rooms. We might need to take a look at level 2, these storage areas and things of that nature.
Right.
We were able to find that we were missing storage on the 3rd floor of a client's project, which would have kind of been on us as the design team to really analyze and make sure the drawings that we're putting out are missing programmatic elements. It really makes you wonder how many architecture firms are out there not really checking it. I'm sure there's a QA QC process, but really checking it.
Yeah, but I mean, like once you've gone through design and you're in design development or even construction documents, if you realize that kind of mistake, you're taking steps backward to kind of go back and correct this, because now you gotta manufacture space on your 3rd floor to find room for that storage that wasn't originally in your design.
And that's not a very pleasant conversation with the client.
No, it is not. They hate kind of being sold one thing and then kind of given a bait and switch when you have to step back and go, well, oh, we forgot this thing. That doesn't look good on you. So
that's right. Even at the interview level, part of that video, I believe, was it's kind of a rough cost estimating tool. So we got some numbers from some contractors that just cover spec sections, and then we say, okay, we got this much square footage. Give us 3 options of that cost, And
Right.
so I built this. It seems like a very large tool, but basically we handed the mouse to the client, and they clicked the options that they wanted, and they were able to visualize the areas that their decisions were making, and they were able to visualize the cost of those. So not just the area, which is something new for them, but also that instant cost feedback
Right.
as they're, oh, well, maybe I don't need the Cadillac option in the hallways, so let's go back to that other option.
Right.
Before we were maybe had that in Excel, but not interactively.
Right.
So
So now it makes it a little easier to kind of value engineer certain portions of the building, show the ramifications cost-wise immediately to the client, and let them drive it. That's really powerful. I mean, that's a great selling
absolutely,
tool for yourselves. I seem to recall
absolutely,
you saying the client came back to you guys and were like, "Hey, you know, you always bring it when you come to a meeting like this. You always bring
that's right.
something cool." So that
Yeah,
looks good on you as an architecture firm or design firm as well.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what was my next major topic? Oh, yes, acquiring data. So, and we kind of alluded to this a little bit as well. So, I talked about our data suite kind of minimally. If you guys want to know more about that, certainly feel free to contact your, a sales guy at CTC or a tech guy at CTC. They can show it to you. But we're talking to Ryan today about how he captures data. So, how are you going about and getting information into a model or out of a model in a design firm like what you guys have? Do you have dedicated programmers and staff, or using some other kind of tool set?
Really, there's only one or two people that really manage the whole implementation of this, and one of them being me. In a big company like that, it's a slow going process. They have to see the value, and obviously everybody's seen the value, but
Right.
and being able to implement this at a studio level is a bit of a challenge. I think everybody in a larger firm understands that because it's a little bit of a learning process. I'm not asking people to be computer programmers. We did hire a computer programmer, I want to say 2 summers ago, and did some interesting things with that. But for the most part, we've discovered that we only need computer programmers on staff if we are ready to proceed with a fully functioning tool. But we've been able to get by with Dynamo and Grasshopper and a couple other tools
Right.
to basically dish out these automation tools that I've generated.
Nice. So Dynamo is your primary sort of scripting tool for this process.
Yeah, because we're so heavy into Revit,
Right.
it just makes sense. We do use Grasshopper and Ryan.
Right. Right. And then you take, as far as some of that data sourcing goes, I'm guessing most of the time it's going to be what, Microsoft Excel or some kind of spreadsheet tool?
It depends on what it is and how we're sharing it. For the most part, I would say most of it's just Excel at the moment, but
Right.
we do have a Azure platform that we can ship up to that.
Sure.
And we talked about that pre-show too.
Yep.
It's just a matter of getting over that mindset of, okay, I just gave you my data, and now I have to pay you to give it back to me.
That's the Microsoft Azure model right now. Is
Yeah.
you give them all kinds of information. They're like, hey, great, we'll take this, but oh, you want it back? Well, now we're going to charge you something for that data acquisition, which is a little
Sure.
backwards to
Which
me, but hey, whatever.
it works, and
It
it's
does.
just a different way. You have to get into that kind of
Yeah.
method of thinking.
Yeah.
Uh, it's
It's
fine.
very
So we'll
software
do
as a
that.
service oriented, or rather, data access as a service oriented. Yeah.
Right.
So cool. Um, what would you say your designers, when they're working with this, are primarily trying to interface with? Are they primarily using an Excel, or are you guys starting to use Azure more and more?
Primarily Excel. It's
Right.
again, everybody's kind of in the infancy here, in my
Sure.
opinion. We don't want to go straight to the moon here. We want to say, if because we want them to learn along the way too, and basically say, oh hey, if you just need to grab something real quick and you don't want to connect and or call me and hook into or call the BIM manager or the IT support, and you just need this little packet of information really quick, here's how you shoot it to Excel or a CSV file.
Right.
And then once you get it there, then you have more time to kind of hand it off and get it up to the cloud. But there's so many moments in design where there's, I don't want to say frantic, but there's a lot of speed. And we want to make sure that how we implement this is safe and fast enough and smart enough that people learn along the way
Right.
of how to do everything.
Yeah. You certainly don't want this process to be a hurdle and a burden on the design team, because then it doesn't add the value that it's supposed to add. Oh, come on, camera. again with this. It keeps fading on me. Craziness. And, Ryan, you and I are using still the same camera, but mine for some reason today is being obnoxious. Hey, technology, right? What are you going to do?
That's right.
So the design team making this sort of fluid in their workflow. Now, how did you guys go about doing that? How did you go and make this a fluid process, or as fluid as you can? Like you said, you're still in infancy, so I know it's not done yet, but like, how do you step into this? If there's a design team watching us today or in the future from the recording and they want to get into this, how do they start making those first steps?
No, I've got a great way that worked for us. I mean, and we're still working on it. I hosted DLR Group's first hackathon in our Poland office. And that was probably the dawning of okay, if I'm forced to do this over, a couple hour period, lunch period, and all that, you really expose them to, I've got to connect to the internet for this kind of host, and I've got to write this script or download a script from Arc Machines, and then run it in Revit, get that database, push it out. So it was really a hackathon that I put on.
Right.
And I'm hoping that I can put more of those on throughout many of our offices to really get people over that hurdle,
right?
As they learn this, because there's really no, in my opinion, soft, easy way to say, oh, hey, here's Power BI, go ahead and learn on your own time.
Right.
We really got to be focused on how we implement, create,
right,
all that stuff.
Let's take a step even further back. How did you get started in this data side, this data acquisition, data manipulation, sort of Power BI presentation kind of thing?
And this goes back a long way. So my dad was actually a computer programmer, and he still is to some degree. And then he bought a hardware store and ran that. But I always watched him open up, the command line in DOS, and he typed some things and change directory and all that. So it was very interesting to see how a computer worked. And how a person interacted with it.
Right.
And then I went on. I was actually doing an architecture degree and a mechanical engineering degree at the same time at UNL. And then I took a computer programming class. It was kind of an intro 150 course.
Right.
And I didn't do all that bad in it. I didn't get an A, but I think I got like a B plus. And I thought, hey, this wasn't so hard.
Yeah.
No, Fortran and some C and it was just basic stuff.
Yep.
And so I said, okay, well, let's take this to the next level, play with Excel, started to become more of a master with Excel. And then, of course, I went to Autonomous University in 2008, and you get exposed to so much when you go to a big conference like that. And then that's really when it started taking off. I was like, I can take my engineering skills, my architecture skills, my entrepreneurial skills, my Excel skills, and my computer programming skills, what little I have of that, and mesh those all together and mix them up and see what comes out. And then Tableau came along, and I started messing with that. I started learning how to build websites barely. And then Power BI came on. I was like, this is super easy. Like, I can actually get other people to use this.
Right.
And so that's where Power BI really took off.
Nice. So very cool. Very cool. So let's see, what time are we sitting at? Just want to make sure that I'm not going crazy over time. Oh, we're not even halfway through. We got plenty of time today. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. All right. So when you started digging into the world of Dynamo, what really got you into Dynamo, and what kind of resources did you learn or did you use when you were first studying up on Dynamo? And I know you kind of got in very early in the curve, and you have progressed through the Dynamo curve, but how did that kind of start, and how did that morph into you becoming more or less what I would consider an advanced Dynamo / expert Dynamo user?
Awesome.
Yes.
Very much an amateur, though.
I think we'd all be humble and say we're all amateurs, but some of us are less amateur than others.
Yeah. For me, I wish I had more time to develop this. Is the thing, because I know how to do it, and all the stuff that I'm coming out with is really rough because I've got 2 kids at home, I got a full-time job, and wife, kids, all that stuff.
Yep.
So just trying to get time. I know how to do it. I just need to get through it. So funny story. How did I get in on this? Well, whenever you go to AU and you're at a party where somebody says, well, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but we got this going on. You're at the right spot then. Mm-hmm. You're at that party you need to be at. And that's
exactly.
And that party was with Mr. Nate Miller. We were at it was like a training. I can't remember who it was, but it was in they rented a whole suite. It was 27th floor or something of the Palazzo, and I met up with Nate Miller, and he said he was talking Dynamo with me, and I was like, when's this a good time to get started? And this was probably 2013.
Sure.
He said now, and just like looked at me and he said, you need to get on this now. And it was Dynamo .06 or 7 at that point.
Right.
And I was like, oh, all right. Like he was just, it was laser focused. What are you waiting? He didn't say this, but it was very, what are you waiting for? Like, look at this. And, he had his lunchbox package and he was rocking and rolling with that stuff, big time. And then I ended up running into, I don't know if he remembers this, but I ran into Daniel Davis of WeWork. He was at Case at the time. It was
Right.
like his first 2 weeks at Case or something like that. And so I talked to him a little bit about his background. Amazing guy. And so I thought, oh, there's something to this data thing that I've been hearing about, been working on. I better go full bore into this. I even went as far as to start learning like Arduino programming.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I mean, just full core into this. So and there's a lot of pain you got to go through to test and compile and interpret and all this stuff. And there's a big learning curve here. It's been great. So yeah, that conversation led to me learning more about it, and that's where I'm at today.
I suspect that kind of led you down the path of getting into the Alexa / the Echo tool set as far as you did.
Yes, yeah. So once, I don't know what moment it was, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago. Once you learn one or two programming languages, you start to realize, oh, they're all kind of the same to some degree.
Yep.
Just in how to get a flow going in it. So you go through a couple examples, and you can basically hotwire. That's how I look. You can hotwire a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah. You're basically learning the flow. What does the programming interface want from me so I can tell it what to do. And then once you learn that, you're right. Languages are just different syntax.
Yeah, it's syntax and routines, and then
Right.
The Alexa has such a great learning kit,
Right.
Online learning tools. You can watch videos and yeah, it's just, oh, okay, if I do this and this, it should work, right? And then it either does or it doesn't, and then you realize, oh, I used // instead of \\. Okay,
Right.
go in there and fix it.
Oh shoot, I commented this out instead of making it real. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of run code, it's broke. Rewrite it. Run code, it's broke. Oh wait, this part works now, but this doesn't. Okay, rerun that part. Hit enter.
Yep.
It's a lot of trial and error when you.
It's also, I think, a big thing when a person's getting into this. Take off bite-sized chunks. You don't have to write the hugest, the biggest program ever. You just have to write one little step, make it automate one little thing. If you're getting into this, even with Dynamo, do one small thing, and then you can stack those. You can make the next big thing and the next big thing, and give yourself inputs, and then it becomes a program instead of just a simple little script in some cases. Yeah. But it starts with just one step, just like walking, right?
That's absolutely right. And then you made a good point. I view Dynamo now as more of a prototyping tool to get to a custom tool. Yep. I mean, you think of the people out there like Andrew Human UI developing that. He was at that point many years ago,
right.
Saying, oh, hey, well, why am I running this Grasshopper script when I can just create this interface that has all the parameters I need?
Right.
I can code it and just make it run way faster and dramatically better.
Yeah, we view Dynamo exactly the same way. It's a fantastic prototyping tool. Gets you to a permanently written program in C# or VBA or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
It's a great starting point to just, it makes it attainable for everybody out there. Doesn't matter what your discipline is. You could be Joe, electrical engineer, and you want to write a script to help automate something you're doing. Do it. Use Dynamo for that. Start it up, and then to make it distributable to your masses in your firm or even share with the world, then you can start moving on to something more like a C# or something. And, it's similar language. Dynamo is visual programming, but
right.
So you have to actually learn to do some coding. But even in Dynamo, you're doing some basic coding. You might be doing a little bit of Python. You might be doing a little, code blocking. You're still learning a little bit about code. It's entry-level code, but you're learning it. And there's plenty of tutorials out there, guys. If you're looking to get into writing some stuff, gosh, you can just basic Google search and find free samples of code and free lessons, and teach yourself some entry-level programming pretty quickly.
Yeah, and
So
that's the great thing. So, funny you mentioned that. So the thing that I'm trying to work on now is my architect machines thing business, if you will, that I've been trying to develop for about 7 or 8 years now.
right.
Um, Basically, maybe you don't want to code, Sean, and maybe you just want to download script. I want to see it work. I want to know what packages I need. I want to know what Revit tag I need to make it use, what parameters to set,
Yep.
and I just want to download that whole baseball card, right? So there's the stats on the back, and then there's a picture of it. I
Yep.
just want to download that whole thing, just grab it and go. And so that's why I made that. It's a great little repository. It's not unlike GitHub, but it's a little bit more visual,
Sure.
where you
Sure.
can download a Revit model, a Grasshopper script, a Dynamo script. I've only got a few scripts up now because I'm kind of doing it in my spare time, but
Right.
um, I have resources available too.
I think your building builder is up there, right? Your tower builder.
Absolutely, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's up on the package manager. I'm making it better, every week because I'm
Yep.
learning something. John Pearson's just commented on it.
Yep. Yep.
Had some great suggestions, and Louis Smith with the Dynamo crew had some more great suggestions. It's just a matter of time
It's always a matter
to.
of time. Exactly. So, all right. Let's also talk about presenting the data. Because we've talked about sort of Dynamo for scripting. We've talked a little bit about Excel, and we'll get more into this in a minute. But presenting this information in a meaningful way. Excel is interesting-ish. It can do some cool formats. It can do maybe some pivot tables. It can do
Pivot
some
table.
graphs. Whatever. Yeah. But it's not really all that interactive necessarily. So there's other tools that are out there, and I think you and I both have kind of settled on Power BI as one of our primary tools because the learning curve is low. But tell me a bit about your kind of investigation into that Power BI side of the sort of data presentation side.
Right. So, yeah, geez, it's been a long time. Um, Really, I find that if you can improve the not just the visual outcome of what your data looks like, but organize it in a way that's reproducible, that's really the secret behind Power BI here, in my opinion. So what I do, and we'll go through the example here in a couple of minutes
Yep.
of basically putting the layout there and it's getting into a data mindset. Okay, what data am I after? I'm not after everything. I can create a couple pages in it, but I'm not. If I had to narrow it down to 10 data points, what would those be, and why would they be the most important, and so on and so forth. You can rebuild it as more data comes in, or you don't need it. But so I want a very logical flow, and that's not just easy for me to read, but easy for the team to read. And if it's being presented to the client, really, really easy for the client to read.
Right.
Really, nothing overwhelming. And that's where I think some people might take it too far, or maybe not far enough.
Right.
And so we'll go through, like I said, we'll go through the example, and it'll be hopefully clear as day
Yep. In
for
fact,
people.
you know what?
Yeah,
Why don't we take some time and just kind of, since you mentioned that example, why don't we just go through it right now? We'll just kind of switch
absolutely.
over. So I've got it
Yeah,
pulled up. Let me just kind of change my screen out here a little bit. And
sure.
we'll head over here. This is a recorded YouTube video that you put together for today's discussion, as I recall. And so I'm going to play it, and I'm just going to let you kind of voice over what's going on here for the most part as this kind of plays through. We got, 11 and a half minutes or so.
Yep.
So this is actually kind of starting in the Dynamo realm, right? This is taking a look at your. Oh, this is the tower generator. I forgot where
Oh,
actually I saw that.
yeah. And there's a lot of people working on this. I mean, shout out to Mike Engel. He and I were talking on Twitter the other day. He was showing me something he was doing, and
Nice.
I was kind of doing the same thing. And I think there's probably about 4 or 5 people doing this at the moment
By
because
the way,
all
Mike, if
design
you're
oriented.
listening in, I want you on my show.
Yeah.
So just so you know.
Yeah. So, all right, let's see here because I'm not seeing your screen. So let me pull up the video on my
You
end.
know what? Hang on a second here. Hang on. Let me change my. I'm gonna pause this for a minute. I believe it should be. Let's see. I'm gonna pull this off to the side. I think I have it all covered up. Can you see it now? Or am I not sharing
I
it for you?
cannot.
You cannot. Hang on 1 minute. I'll get this set up here. Let's make sure. Share my screen. Share this. Share. I thought you were seeing my screen the whole time. How's that? Is that better? Or is Skype freaking out on us?
Oh, it's going. Oh, okay, perfect. Woo.
All right.
Oh, turn that baby on HD. Dang. Oh, there it goes. Okay.
Yeah, maybe it's just taking a second to refresh. Besides the whole OBS studio, I'm live casting YouTube. I'm showing YouTube. I don't think my computer's going to let this go HD. If you guys want to see the original of this later on, I'll point you to Ryan's channel here in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and play this now and let you kind of voice over what's going on here.
Yeah, so literally blank Dynamo file, blank Excel file, blank Power BI file. So what I did for Arc Machines was to build a quasi tower generator. I thought it was fairly easy explained with the floors, length of floors. You just put number of values in. I'm going to go through that. John Pearson had some great points. So I'm going to go back through that and update. So when you hover over, it says, please input an integer value. Most of, if not all of these are integer values. So really easy. You could use an integer slider, throw in all this information, your site size. The client wants a 15-story tower, seven floors here, and so on and so forth. So I just kind of build through that. I've also created a package for DLR Group, which is all of our company colors.
Now, is this something that's accessible to the world as well, or is that one that's kind of more just internal?
Yes, they're both. Both of these are accessible. They're out on Package Manager. So awesome. yeah, just look for Architect Machines and DLR Group, and those are. It's only our company colors. I don't know how far I'm going to take that, but
fair enough.
If any competitor wants to use our branding colors, have at it.
There you go. There you go.
Great. And so now you see the color diagram behind us. It's our basic mass outline of the building. And now we want to pull all these values out, right? Because we want to know exterior area 1, 2, and 3. Now, people will say, why isn't that north, south, east, west? Well, because you can rotate that building. So what was east might become north. So let's call it 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then it's labeled on the output. So I chop the list, transpose it real quick, so I can throw it out in a row, and then this is where I export to Excel real quick. I grab that file, location. So this is all pretty standard stuff for even a beginner,
right,
to do, because it's all built, all for you. So I grab that. Give it just a second here. And it doesn't even take 11 minutes for this thing to go through. I mean, it's like slowly me talking through it as I code it.
Right.
So we've got all that information, boom, throws in Excel. I did speed one thing up, which is I highlighted everything, hit Control T on the keyboard to make it an actual table. So that's kind of what I'm showing right there.
Right.
And that way it gives headers above it.
Yep, and it makes BI a little happier, I think, when it's a table.
Exactly. Otherwise, it says column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4 instead of the titles of each header.
Exactly.
So, yeah, basically, now if I want to change these values from 2 to 3, boom, boom, I get a visual output, and then all that data gets updated in that list. So my slenderness ratio would change, my area would change, my number of floors, retail or office or whatever I have it set to. And so blank Power BI. So what I've done, and I've put several of these up on Arc Machines, is get a template background. A lot of people just start dumping files onto it, and so I said, no, you need to organize it and have a plan, a designed plan to have it organized. So this is a layout I came up with in Photoshop. Again, 100% ready to be downloaded, free.
That's just basically it's just an image background is all it is.
Yeah, yep, that's all it is. So here I talk about all of the different ways you can tie into data. I mean, the web one is really cool. Oh, I wish I would have gone further than that, because that's really cool. There's your ODBC.
Yep.
It can tie into all kinds of Revit information. It's pretty crazy. Tied up to your SharePoint site.
Yep.
And Azure and all that. I think I mentioned JSON. Now that the word is out that they might be going from XML to JSON for the Dynamo rebuild. So
nice.
That just came out of the UK Dynamo user group in London last week.
Very cool.
So that's official.
Excellent.
Anyway, tie into the Excel data in this instance. So
now was that one of those we can't tell you this but kind of conversations?
At one point it was, I bet. Yeah, at one point it was. I think that was out in the wild probably at AU last year. So
right.
Anyway, so come in here. It's real easy to just drag and drop. Let's say I wanted my floor area ratio. I grab the number card, and then now I want to customize it. Let's say I want to put a border around it. Oh wait, but I need to refresh my data. I think I paused it here. I had a background glitch here.
Ah.
I think I put that in.
And by the way, this is one of those parts right here where you're dragging and dropping, just a number slide, and you're dragging and dropping bits of information out of your Excel that makes this so incredibly attainable for pretty much any end user out there, right? You get an Excel file, drag and drop, and you got data, and you're able to sort of visualize some of that in different interesting ways. That's awesome.
Yep, you got data. Now what?
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. So, but yeah, and at that point, here's a helpful tip: is once you do create that card and you got it exactly set, colors, borders, everything set, don't make a whole new card.
No.
Copy and paste that other one because it'll save all your color settings.
Heck yeah.
And that's a huge time saver.
Copy paste.
Because now it's just drag and drop.
Yep. And the nice thing also about those number slides is that they only take one piece of data, so you can simply replace that data without having to remove it, replace it again. In fact, in Power BI, one trick that I learned is don't pull data out. Don't remove the data because it kind of resets a bit of your slide. So always just replace that data. It just makes life a little easier.
Oh, yeah.
Just like I see Ryan doing here. He's dragging and dropping on top of the old field that was in there, and it just replaces it. So you have new information, new label, super simple. And this is minutes to build up an interesting display about what's going on in the background.
Yep. I think I built a couple more graphs, and then I shoot over to the finished product. Because at this point, it's really customizable to whatever information you're looking for. I wanted to know core size, elevator size. I wanted to know how many floors. I wanted to know what that building looked like. So I kind of chalked in a building outline. Let me switch graphs, and I'm kind of cheating the system here. This isn't actually true to scale or anything, but I throw this bar graph on and I'm like, well, this would be kind of interesting to have like a wireframe of the building behind it and then size the building proportion. And it happened to line up every single time. So this is kind of a happy accident.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. And that, again, that building outline that you've got there in the background, that was just a part of your image that you brought in that you had photoshopped, right? So nothing super spectacular. There's no like careful mapping of, different graphics. It just, you threw it in there. You brought it in.
Yep.
That's great. So. And
then for customization, so let's say, and I'm writing my own custom R script for Arc machines. It's going to be a different adjacency matrix than the one I've been using in the past. Because I just wanted to be a little bit more customized. As you can tell, I'm kind of that guy.
Right.
So I'm going to build something. So I'm going to create something on the fly here, which is I'm going to create a category mark and then a value. And I want those values to match the category I point. So it's basically just a slightly different way of looking about sheet one here, because I just want these values. But I want that list transposed in a different sheet for this radar chart to work for this custom BI. So I think I speed along here because I doubt I type all these equal sum table one.
Yeah, no, there's a bit of copy paste here in just a moment.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Yeah. Perfect. So I'm like, okay, but at this point, everybody gets it here. Sum X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, so on and so forth. So the reason I'm doing this is that radar chart, since it's a custom script, it needs to look at two different types of values. It needs to kind of have an overarching category, and then each little web that it springs off to are your values.
Right.
So I needed a second piece of data.
And I saw you just did the Control T convert to a table again to get the headers for the data sets.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And like I said, everybody can hit play, pause, review back over, watch all these little tiny things that I do, these little steps, and kind of learn from me. All the little shortcuts. Bring that back in, and then this thing just lights up. Once again, table 2. And I could rename the table to be radar chart value something.
Yeah, just being generic for the sake of a demo. So.
Yep.
And in this case, the radar chart isn't looking incredibly interesting because you just copied and pasted those values down, but it gets much more interesting when you're actually taking, specific levels, specific areas, whatever, and getting their real data plugged into this from, say, a Revit export or something. So,
And what's nice about this, and I think I complete the tutorial after this, but as you toggle back and forth, the tower generator, you get to see the different combinations and strengths and weaknesses of those different tower designs. So that radar chart will completely change
Oh yeah.
every time you add 20 stories. Obviously, everything's going to change on it.
Yeah. So this is your toggle to the kind of more refined version.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Very sweet.
Some number values on it, and so this is interesting because this is more of a non-interactive display only chart. So what I say by that is if I click on something, it's not necessarily going to change any values because it's all driven by the Dynamo Studio model.
By that one row export that you kicked out and that one table that was sort of transposed, so to speak.
Super simple. Super simple.
Yep. Yep. So this is a great way for anybody out there, if you're looking to get into sort of a Power BI environment and a little bit of Dynamo or even just a little bit of data access from Revit. I mean, you could take a schedule from Revit and export that to a CSV, bring that into Excel. I mean, it doesn't have to be something super scripted to get cool graphics like this either. It's not quite as automatic, mind you. Your workflow is much more automatic, but still it's sort of an entry-level way of getting into some interesting data here and seeing what a simple design change in Dynamo or Revit or whatever might affect sort of the overall balance of a building.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool. That's powerful stuff.
Very powerful. Yeah, and then so you take this data and you're basically client-ready performa information. As a matter of fact, you just tie all their performa data into, because that's really what a client like this kind of developer-driven kind of process here is how fast can we take what we're doing, be comfortable with it as the design team, and then export that out to them. So yeah, go ahead.
Right. Kind of stop.
Yeah, I got a couple dashboards there.
Yeah, you got a few. You definitely have a few. Oh, and then there's the ads, of course. Let's go here just to your channel. I want to kind of promote you just a little bit. If you guys want to find Ryan and kind of take a look at more of what he's been doing and some of the videos he's put up, you can find him here. If you search Ryan Cameron Dynamo, we talked about this 2 days ago. Ryan Cameron Dynamo will give you this channel right here. Of course, there's that BIM broadcast example video that we just watched moments ago. The one that I was kind of talking about a little earlier that you guys might want to get really excited about, maybe share this internally at your firm, was this one. Dynamo Next, Season 2, Episode 5, Data-Driven Analysis, where you can really dig in and see some pretty amazing dashboards that Ryan has kind of come up with. Maybe you contact him, see if he's willing to share. Maybe go up to Architect Machines if they're up there. I don't know. But
a lot of them are.
A lot of them are. Yeah, there you go. So, it's just taking, now getting the knowledge on how to use that and how to tell your own stories. And in a lot of cases, you're going to want to tell a different story. That's fantastic. That's the whole goal of our discussions here on BIM Broadcast, is helping you guys figure out how you can tell stories in a more interesting way for your users, for your internal management, possibly. Like the tool set that CTC puts out there, it's sort of a similar kind of idea where we're capturing open and save times. You can use this to talk about, if I do this simple bit of maintenance, how much does that improve the performance of a model? So this is kind of getting into more of that medium to big data, but it goes beyond just design into model management. And there's sky's the limit. When you guys start looking at data that surrounds your building process, I mean, it's impressive. One thing I was going to actually ask, and I think maybe you may have said this earlier, you were talking about sort of early design, programmatic, sort of schematic layout in a tool like Dynamo and capturing what that program is. Have you thought about taking the very early program as it started and compare that iteratively through to other design iterations as the client scope changed, and then also how that kind of compares to the final output of construction documentation models? Have you gone that far yet, or is that sort of on the skyline?
That's right where we're at right now.
Nice.
So because we want to be able to create a log, if you will, of all those design decisions.
Yep.
So we can say, well, this person was sitting over here, but we had to move them because the plotter room moved up here. And to be able to it's almost like a timeline toggle to go back, bing, 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 bing. Here's where we were. And then the data reads out, okay, the reason they changed from here to here is all of these points. Bill wanted to move where Karen was, and Karen had to move because, the plotter room was moved over here, or distribution network of some sort had to get put in.
Yep.
So you can start to see that timeline of all those design decisions. Because maybe you might want to go back and you want to hit refresh right away and go back to 3 weeks ago design.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's pretty cool. So I imagine at that point, that's kind of where you're digging into something a bit more advanced than just Microsoft Excel. I'm sure that's like when you're getting into SQL or Azure. You guys are using Azure, tools like
Yep.
that, right?
Yep. So we're
Because
gonna.
Excel's good at what's happening now. Even tools like Dynamo are good at what's my current set of settings. What other tool sets might you
Um,
be using for some of that sort of iteration, sort of maybe even in design iteration?
well, you kind of made me think about explaining, maybe stepping back just a second and explaining why we would want to do something like that, and an analogy of a tool. So let's say we were looking at something like IBM SPSS, which was my first introduction of saying, oh, these words can now become number values. So whenever a number value from a word comes up, resource, drive the resource to that and spit that back out.
Right.
So um, I haven't come across a tool quite like that for these tracking design changes in a custom way that we're looking into. So maybe have me back on the show in 9 months and
Nice.
have me whiz bang some more stuff out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll do that again for sure. So, you know what? I think we're coming up close, nearing the hour here. It's
Yeah.
12:52. Time goes fast when we're on this show, for real. So, one of the things, and I pulled this off screen, but one of the things that I like to ask our guests is, what is exciting you about what you see coming in BIM in the near future? Like, what have you seen that's like, hey, this is freaking awesome that maybe not everybody knows about?
Um, I'm going to be selfish and say what I'm working on right now.
Nice.
Power BI. I think Power BI is still pretty new. So that and maybe what I'm working on. No, you're ghosting out, man.
I totally am ghosting him, and it's
That's
just
great.
it's crazy. Come on, camera. Come on. Let's go.
Now everyone knows you have a green screen.
Oh, hey, I do. I'm green screening the heck out of this. So, my background wall in my office does not have BIM broadcast. I wish it did. That'd be cool. But no, I'm green screening
You
it.
need to get that laser cut out, man. You need to get something like this up there.
Totally.
You
I'd
know?
love to get that sort of
Oh, yeah.
acoustical foam thing. That'd be awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
So yeah, getting back Power BI and really what I'm trying to come out with Arc Machines, um, it's pretty daunting and challenging. I'm learning a lot, so hopefully people understand that it's been a work in progress. Probably always will be a work in progress, but
right.
there are resources out there that they can to use to learn to help, and I guess project myself out there as a thought leader of a national or international resource, if you will, for this type of stuff.
Right.
So
Awesome. Now, the sort of final major segment. You and I talked about this earlier this week, and I didn't want to know what you were going to say here. But
right.
I like to give guests on this show a 2-minute soapbox to talk about whatever it is that's on your mind that you want to talk about. Could be current events, could be something in your office, could be something that peeves you about when you go out and walk your pet and someone leaves the dog do all on the ground and they don't pick up after themselves. Right? It could be anything.
You know, I was just thinking that, but I'd probably save that for another trip. No,
So
no, I gave it some thought, and
yeah,
we talked about not Clive, Praxis,
yeah,
Gordon.
pragmatic practice. Gordon
Yeah,
Price.
and
Yep.
he had a great story on the Me Too. I actually haven't watched it yet, but we and I talked about it. So, uh, I think I'm going to dive into um, just encouraging people. I think that's really what I want to talk about for the next 2 minutes or so is um, because learning this process, everything I just showed, there's pain points that come along with that, and you've got to be tough enough, mentally tough, physically tough, to be able to push through these things. And I think that's just about like life in general, right? So life's always going to punch you in the face. At
Right.
least and it's several face punches to get to this point. So I just want to encourage everybody that yeah, you're going to hit roadblocks, stumbling blocks. There's going to be something you don't know, but just trust in yourself and trust that you can do it. And call me, call Shawn, reach out there on Twitter or whatever, leave a comment, and we can help. Everybody can help each other. I
Right.
mean, really, that's what I want to get out there is everybody can help each other, and you just I don't want to say this. Um, yeah, no, it's tough, and there's people to help.
Yep. And also, I think I want to jump onto that a little bit and add a little bit to it. Ryan is sitting here encouraging you watching this broadcast, and myself even, to do this, but also yourselves. When you see somebody else going out there and trying something new, be encouraging to them as well. We do it for our kids. We're like, yeah, try this new thing, do this new cool deal, whatever, learn this new skill, whatever that is. But do it for your colleagues as well, right? We all get better when we all get better. So everybody helps everybody. It's a big community. So be willing to share, in my opinion. That's a great, share your knowledge. We'll share ours. Ryan and I are all about sharing knowledge. So let us know how we can help you. And that's kind of what we're here for. I'm going to jump over to a couple of quick announcements here, guys. Midwest University is up and coming. Midwest-u.com. Registration is open right now. I strongly encourage you guys. It's coming up on March 21st and 22nd of 2018. It's in Minnesota, and it's at a really nice brand new conference center. So if you're not going to this, I would encourage you to show up. And we are actually, this is an interesting thing, we are having Sophia from Hanson Robotics there. We're going to have some chances to talk with her. And kind of have her on main stage, and I'm going to get a chance to do a little BIM broadcast. So those of you who can't attend, I'll be kind of broadcasting a bit about that interview, but we encourage you to be there in person. It should be fairly interesting for, I think, everybody. Also here, Built Conference is coming down the line. August 9th through the 11th is when it is. I believe abstracts, they're now closed. It says so right there on their site, but I believe registration's opening really soon. This and the Midwest University are the two premier events that I personally go to every single year. I think they're fantastic. I think the knowledge share is great. Another one that was just shared with me by Ryan, and actually I'm seeing some familiar faces here on last year's presentation, is the Advancing Computational Building Design. Ryan, why don't you talk a little bit about what this is all about?
Well, yeah, this was a real treat last year. I think a lot of people didn't know what to expect, and we had a lot of great speakers. I got to meet Zig and Jason Smith, and Jonathan.
Yep.
So it's and Jorge. It's just been a great conference. So they're having it again in New York City this year at the end of July, which I think is a really good time to jump out to New York City and kind of speak out there.
So it's right before. I'll be speaking. That's actually right before Built, then, right?
Yes, I want to say it's probably 2 weeks before Built, nice. That's good too. Hey, St. Louis is just south of me, so
hey, there you go.
That's okay. And you're just north of me, so it all works out.
Exactly.
But yeah, they're putting this on again, and it'll be different from last year. It's not just going to be a continuation of last year, but it's going to be a whole new thing. So it was a real treat.
So this was last year was the first year for this particular event, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. All right. Well, we're going to kind of close this out today. Everybody who is here for the live stream, we appreciate you being here. Ryan, I appreciate you being here. We look forward to having this show more and more frequently. Typically every 2 weeks is kind of what our target is. If you guys have guests, or if you want to be a guest in this show and kind of sit down and talk about some of the cool things you're doing in BIM, write me. I'm all about kind of sharing with the community the knowledge of building information modeling just across the board. So no topic in BIM is off limits, and it doesn't have to be about architecture, right? We've had some guests on here talking MEP. We'll have some guests in the near future, hopefully talking about some civil design. That is also a part of BIM. So, any topic that you've got that's of interest, write me. I'm more than happy to bring you on. In fact, if you want to just comment on the video or comment in our show notes, that's actually a great way to get a hold of us as well. All right, all. Thank you for your time. Thank you again, Ryan. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys in about 2 weeks, hopefully.
Thanks again, Shawn.
Yep.